Hello all! Today I'll be working on an e-reader sleeve snap button bag from some fabric that you've seen me weave in a previous video. I hope you enjoy. My name is Took. I'm a disabled genderqueer weaver who's had life take odd turns, but who knows that even tattered and worn yarn still has value, and that tired joints and health flares don't have to stop the journey. I weave exclusively with secondhand fibers, aided with adaptive warping, HR and OSHA cats, and a wonderful found family. Welcome to Hawksong Weaving, where all our paths are a little bit warped. I make these snap button bags a lot. They're some of the best sellers I have when I'm vending, especially the bags sized to fit all editions of Kindle and iPad minis. But they're also so versatile and can be used in all sorts of different sizes. Like Mrs. Crocombe over English Heritage, I'll say, for this project you will need woven fabric, lining fabric, snap buttons, a button of your choice, a sewing machine with an adjustable zigzag stitch option, an embroidery floss, and a strong needle. Because this is a fairly intensive sewing project, I won't be focusing on the weaving part of this, but I will do my best to remember to tag the video where I did weave these two blanks, but this video is being made in the middle of my busy season, so I'm giving myself some grace if I forget. Most of my snap button bags involve sewing two separate weaving projects together. So, sorry for the pun, I'll start out by getting my two weaving blanks set up and then stitching them with a tight zigzag stitch down the sides, joining them together. Then I'll get the now wider piece of fabric together and flip it open, like a book, stitching in the ditch again with a tight zigzag stitch. This helps sew any spots I may have missed and flattens this out, as this is acrylic fabric and doesn't react well to ironing, let alone with the copper flecks in this. I could sew this by hand, but I'd need to charge more than people would pay per bag, and time is money in this particular aspect. Like everything about how I make content and weave in general, sew in general, take what works for you and leave the rest. I'd like to thank you for watching. If you'd like to support my work, some free ways to do that are to like, subscribe, or follow, and share. This applies to other small artists as well. It's a great way to let the social media algorithms know this is content worth watching. If you'd like to support me financially, there's a Buy Me a Coffee linked below, which acts as sort of a tip jar. Also know that there are so many of you absolutely fantastic and wonderful subscribers, I've been able to link the online Hawksong Weaving shop, so feel free to check out the unique handwoven products. This next bit is absolutely a joke, but just in case, in this economy, I won't say no. For $1,000 a month, you can tell me that I'm not actually disabled, I'm just lazy, and to try whatever yoga, juice cleanse, snake oil nonsense fixed your cousin. Feel free to message me, and I'll get you my payment deets. I take Cash App, Venmo, and PayPal for this nonsense. I and some friends are also working on a really new, exciting, interesting project. That was a bit rambly, but oh well. We've started a nonprofit, and the Mill River Marginalized Artists Collective, or MRMAC, support and resources for marginalized artists by marginalized artists in Western Massachusetts. Our goal is a storefront to sell marginalized artists' work year-round, along with donated art supplies, with the end goal being offering startup grants for artists, a lending library of the expensive art tools, and attending art markets on each other's behalf if someone is having a health flare or a hard season of life. And generally the consensus from everyone we've talked to is that the artists of Western Mass are unionizing and forming a guild. So if you'd like to help with any of that, please check the link down below. Just following and sharing everything would be phenomenal, as so much of our content is going to be suppressed by various algorithms due to its quote-unquote political nature. I'm an artist with incredible amounts of privilege because I know that my base needs are going to be cared for by my partner's income. Most artists in the area are not doing this because it's fun, because we want to. We're doing it because our bodies cannot handle a 9-to-5. And then going every weekend, if you can get into a market every weekend, and essentially setting up an entire store and then working solo retail for several hours for like the entire day, it's exhausting. And I want to provide another option for my fellow artists in this area. I'm now taking the lining fabric and cutting it, or ripping it as it's muslin, to the width that I want. I'm making my e-reader sleeves. These are measured to fit all editions of Kindle and iPad minis, so I'm measuring a width of 9 inches. But of course, first taking off the edges for this particular piece of fabric. I got this in a thrift store. I was quite pleased with the find. It's a brand new fat quarter, so we'll keep going. And I could not find my actual measuring thing, so measuring stick, ruler, geez, I'm crow, my brain is fried. It is the middle of my busy season. I think I said that already. I lay the lining fabric down kitty corner and make a lining and woven fabric sandwich. This is a do as I say, not as I do moment. Please use clips or pins. Then, using the same zigzag stitch, I'm going to go around the woven fabric's edges, flipping the fabric around as I need to, and cutting the long end of the lining fabric once I get there. This is not fine sewing, this is effective sewing. I do the dainty stuff in my counted cross stitch in the evenings. Now that I'm coming around the corner, it becomes clear why I started at the point I did, as I've left an opening to flip the bag right side out. Now, rather than cut the weaving blank at this point, because you'll notice it's not stabilized on the other side, I'm instead going to place the lining fabric next to it and repeat the whole process. Once I have 2 lining strips sewn on with a stitch making the woven fabric nice and stabilized, I'll take my good shears and cut down the center, taking care not to cut into the zigzag stitching. I keep going down the woven fabric, sewing, cutting until I don't have enough left to make another snap button bag. Then, depending on the amount I left, I either cut my losses, make an odd size bag, or turn the remaining weaving blank into a few scrappy scented sachet bags for me to fill with scraps and scented herbs later. Once all the machine sewing is done, I clear down my kitchen table, get as many of the scraps under proverbial lock and key before Penelope Calico eats them and charges me an expensive vet visit, and get the bags to be over to my studio desk. You can see that I've got some already under process. The next step was to churn the bags right side out. I wasn't able to film that particular bit, but I use a hair stick for the fiddly bits of this. But you could use a chopstick or a knitting needle or a butter knife. Pretty much anything long and pokey but not stabby. If your weave is loose, you can poke through it, but that's okay. I folded the bag to the length that I want. For an e-reader sleeve, I use a busted up Kindle as a formatting guide, work smarter and not harder, and this way I don't need to take e-waste to the dump. Took a pin and got the pocket of the bag held together, and this is where the embroidery floss comes in. I use a blanket stitch because I've gotten practiced at this. You could use a whip stitch if that's quickest and easiest for you, but I prefer to do a blanket stitch to get a nicer effect at this point. For me, in order to sell these, I need to do something quickly in order to keep the price where people are actually going to buy them. It's an unfortunate aspect of this economy. I constantly get told, you need to raise your prices, and I have. But still, it's a matter of you need to keep the prices where people are actually going to buy it, and it's better, in my opinion, and for me, to have lower priced things and make more sales than higher priced things that do not move. I blanket stitch all around the edges, tucking the knots into the woven fabric as I need to add more floss. It's not worth it to measure out the entire length of floss you'll need for this project all at once. Even this length causes some snarls and tangles that will have to be dealt with. Due to intense amounts of feedback from my customers, I've started adding D-rings to my e-reader sleeves so that people can have the options of using them as wristlets, handbags, etc. It just makes things a bit more versatile, and it's easy enough to add into the sewing process, so no skin off my back, and I love to have more options for my customers. Just carefully adding this in with the blanket stitch, keeping it nice and stabilized, and of course dealing with the snarls I mentioned earlier. It's not worth it to measure out that entire length of floss. Even this length is fairly unwieldy and can cause a lot of frustration breaks. Now for the buttoning. For a flat button with holes, I'll start the knotted thread on the lining side of the flap, where it will be hidden underneath the outie part of the snap button. But for shank buttons, I'll sew the outie snap button on first, then cover the stitches with the shank button. Both for visual effect and for stabilization, I sew this button on several times each direction, just keeping and getting things going. And of course, the floss is going to be a pain in my butt a little bit. This is why I prefer to use nicer bits of floss, but I can also just adapt, overcome. Here we go. I'll trim this on the other side. Sigh. Sewing the outer part of the snap button in place, getting it all lined up with the outer button, making sure that things are nice and stabilized. Tuck, sew, and repeat as needed. Sewing the innie part of the snap button is a reflection of the outer snap button up top, and bada bing bada boom, I now have a utterly gorgeous e-reader sleeve that will sell like hotcakes at my art market events. Thank you for coming along as I made this. I'm so glad for the odd turn that your path took that brought you here. Thank you for spending time with me at Hawksong Weaving, where we're all a bit warped, and I hope that you have a truly excellent week.